Have you ever thought that you have nothing to share? That nobody could possibly care about the mundane life that you lead? That your life has no meaningful experience in it? That no one could gain anything from what you have to share? Well, if that's you, think again. Because you do have stories. We all have stories. We all have knowledge that we can share. We all have experience that somebody a few steps down the road behind us, in age and experience, needs to hear. And that's exactly what I'm doing this month, as I'm sharing my experiences with mental health to raise awareness about that subject, to get more men talking about their emotions, their feelings, their struggles. Because I believe that the more people speak, the more people share their experience, the more lives that can literally be saved. So with that in mind, it's time to get to it and explore, having the confidence and the courage to share your story. Let's get to it. Greetings, one and all, wherever you are in the universe, and welcome to the latest episode of an Espresso Shot of Confidence. With me, your host, the Master of Awesomeness, Ashley Griffiths. And today we're going to talk all about having the courage and the confidence to share your story. Something that many of us don't do through fear of judgment, and fear that nobody actually cares. Now, in terms of the story, it doesn't matter if we're talking, sharing with a friend on a one-to-one basis, or sharing in a public speaking arena or on social media. The process remains the same. You are verbalizing something that you have experienced, something you have felt, something you have learned, something you have known, something that has happened to you, something that you have made happen by yourself. All of these things come with experience, lessons that can be shared. So no matter how mundane or boring or uneventful you believe your life is, there are things that people need to hear. As I mentioned at the beginning, this month I'm sharing stories about mental health, in particular my journey with it, because it's Movember. Movember isn't just about putting on fancy mustaches on your face and making fashion statements. It is so much more than that. This mustache on my face right now is a call to arms. It is a symbol of unity, of brotherhood. It's to let other people know, I get it. I've been there. Because I know there are so many people out there, so many men that suffer in silence, so many men that don't want to speak up. They feel they're going to be a burden. They feel that there's something wrong with them, that they're not a man because they are depressed, they're anxious, they're having panic attacks, they're stressed, they're dealing with trauma that has been under the surface for God knows how many years, and they just don't know how to deal with that. So I share my stories to let them know that there is a flip side, that people aren't going to judge you, to let them know that there's a flip side, that there's support out there, that people still respect you even though you have mental health issues or problems or issues or trauma or stress or depression or anxiety. That doesn't make you any less of a man. And that is why I choose to show up and share my stories. And this is why I show up and share my story, and why I encourage you to do exactly the same. Regardless of your age, your gender, where you are in the world, there is somebody that needs to hear what you have to say. There will always be that. Always quote Yuval Noah Harari with this, in the fact that we are a race of storytellers, and without our stories, we'd probably still be living in caves or swinging from trees. That has been one of the fundamental ways that humans have evolved and developed over years and have developed methods of communication. Stories are everywhere. They are all around us, from our marketing, from our gossip, from our education systems, from the way that we pass knowledge through our generation after generation after generation of our families. It doesn't matter. We all use stories. We are all surrounded by stories, and we all have stories to share. So I encourage you, I invite you to share your stories and those things that you've learned on this amazing journey that we call life. So let's just think of a few of those right now. If you run a business, my God, every day is a school day. So you could share stories of your successes, your failures, those things you wished you learned sooner, those things that you stumbled upon, those times when you've hit a flow state. You could share stories about what lights you up, be that the results you get with your clients, your students, your colleagues, your staff. It could be finding things by accident, finding that you're actually really good at something because you had to give it a go because you didn't have the budget to pay for someone else to do it. All of these things, there's so much depth of knowledge in there, so much depth of experience. And you sharing that, no matter how you feel it might be mundane, will help someone. And that is one of the biggest benefits that stories give. It helps other people. It makes them feel less alone. It makes them think that, oh, yeah, someone else gets it. And that connection is so, so, so important in this thing called life. And talking of life, you can share stories about your life. I think some of the best lessons that often come are those interactions we have with our children, with our students, with animals, with older people. Those things that clash of species and generations. There's so much wealth of information there, and experience and learned experience that you can share. And again, it helps to build rapport. Everybody can get it. Everyone's got that awkward member of the family. Everyone's got that crazy dog. There's going to be people that resonate, and that can help you again make connections. And those stories connect, they bring us together. You know, one of the things I like telling stories about are the crazy things that have happened to me on my travels. The strangers I've met and had interactions with, and I've ended up just smiling. It's just been amazing. Just loved it. Um, as I've gone around the world, sharing sometimes some very uncomfortable modes of transportation, but the people have made an uncomfortable journey into an extremely memorable one. And again, sharing that experience will help resonate and connect with people who like travel, that like learning about different cultures, that like connecting with other people, that like to see what life is like outside of the bubble that they live in. There are just so many ways there that you can connect. And that's just a few. There's sports, your sporting stories, your life stories as you've grown up, those different stages of development, those lessons you've learned along the way. One of the posts that I see constantly on social media is, if I could talk to my younger self, this is what I would say. So what would you say to your younger self? What lessons have you learned that you kind of wish you'd learned quicker, that would have maybe saved you a lot of hassle along the way if you'd learned them? How can you share that with your younger self? Because I know when I talk about mental health journey, I know I would definitely have said to my younger self, you'll be okay. Smile more, laugh more. You're not alone. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not a goddamn alien. You're not broken. I would love to have been able to grab that younger self, that young boy, that young lost teenager, and given him a big hug. Because that's what he needed. He needed a big hug. But at the time, he was living in a narrative of what it meant to be a man. So the emotions got suppressed. A mask got put on. Copious amounts of alcohol got drunk. And life went on. But that didn't do him any good. And it wasn't until till my late 30s, really, where I thought, no, I'm not going to put on a mask. I'm not going to be able to find the answer at the bottom of a bottle. I can't do that anymore. And I started looking for alternatives, healthier alternatives. And I look back and think about how much pain would have been stopped, both for myself and other people around me, if I'd learnt those lessons at an earlier age. And that's heartbreaking. But I also look at all the things that got learned along the way and makes me the man I am now. The compassion, the nurture, the need to talk about this, the need to share my story, to make a subject that is still deemed pretty taboo, to put a spotlight on it and say, guys, no, this ain't a good way to live. It ain't living. It's barely surviving. Drinking, denying, burying, living a life with zero emotional intelligence, and all the damage that creates with the relationships around you, all the self-medication that men seem to be particularly good at, be that alcohol, drugs, sex, other addictions, and the collateral damage that causes. This is why I share my story, because I know by sharing it, and I've had countless messages ever since I started doing this, people see that they're not alone. They look at alternatives. They go, you know what? He could get the other side of it. Maybe I can too. Maybe, yeah, maybe I need to look at this. Maybe I need to speak to my doctor. Maybe I'm going to call my maid up later on. And for me, if that saves one life, if that makes life of one person so much easier, if that takes some of the strain, if they're able to decompress in some way as a result of hearing that story, and that's a very powerful thing. And that, again, is the power of sharing your story. Regardless of whether you're sharing it because you're trying to process some trauma, or you're sharing it because you know that there's lessons to be learned. You're going to stop someone from suffering from frustration. It is a great way to process your emotions. It's a great way to let off some steam. Just the act of verbalizing that story helps it to get out of your head. And sometimes, and I know I've personally felt that, sometimes that is more than enough. You just hearing the words or seeing them on a page makes you go, oh, wow. Yeah, no wonder I'm in a bad mood. Or, wow, I've come so far. I didn't even realize. I felt I was making no progress, but wow, look how far I've come. And what lessons have I learned along the way? And there is gold in those stories. I can tell you that. Not only from a healing perspective, not only from a business perspective, but from a personal development perspective. As you see your journey there, you can actually see how far you've come, or in the case of emotional processing, that shit, yeah, maybe I need to get some help with this. And again, imagine that from the perspective of, say, the mental health, and certainly from a male mental health perspective, a lot of the time men feel they have to do it by themselves because they've got to be strong. We've got this toxic masculinity narrative of society about what a man should be. And it's bollocks. It's complete bollocks. So when you see it, you verbalize how you're feeling, and you see that maybe the behaviors you've been doing, be that you're drinking, whatever, has got you to a point where you're in bad shape. You get to a decision point. You can stay as you are or realize this ain't working. I need some help here. And that is super, super powerful. It was what brought me back from the brink in 2016. I was in bad shape. I was drinking a lot. I was just living in a perpetual sense of anxiety. It got to a point where there was just too much pressure. So much pressure. I was literally trying to get myself to, I was begging for sleep at the end of the day. I just couldn't handle it. It was horrendous. The voices in my head, the stories, the pain, the world was spinning around me. The alcohol was barely numbing stuff. In the past, the alcohol would stop the panic attacks. It wasn't working. Or I was having to drink even more to get myself on an even keel. I was in bad shape, horrendous shape. And actually being able to see that and being aware of it and picking up the phone and going, I need some help. And then through counseling, learning to unpack my story, I was able to hear it. I was able to see those points where things had gone wrong. I was able to see the root. I was able to come face to face with thoughts. And that is why I share the mental health story, because again, like I mentioned a minute ago, so many times men feel they have to do it by themselves. They have to be strong. They don't want to be a burden. That's not what a man does. That in itself is a story, a narrative that has been drilled into you and you believe. Well, how about you change that script? Because no person can do it alone. You come into the world alone, you go out the world alone, but everything in between, you need help to get here. You need help along the way. And there will be those times where you need someone to hold your hand. And it takes courage, not weakness, to ask for that help. And along the way, as you share your story, you're going to find yourself connecting and helping people, because people will resonate with your story. Like I said earlier on, people have reached out to me and gone, I feel that way. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for sharing this story. It means the world. And you also are heard. I think one of the biggest problems on a societal level is the fact that people don't feel seen and heard. And that often causes them to take a step back, lash out, get triggered, suck up things because they don't feel that they deserve anything else, that they're not good enough. On an emotional level, sometimes we don't feel that we deserve to be heard because, again, maybe you're dealing with trauma. As a man, you worry. I know I initially did. How would I be perceived if I actually spoke up? I was afraid of the judgment that might come from that. But the more that I shared my story, the more I was heard. The more I was heard, the more empowered I felt. The less alone I felt. The less weird and broken I felt. So you're seeing the power there. You're seeing the power of what is possible when you actually share your story. Because yes, maybe you're doing it for business reasons, professional reasons, personal reasons, whatever. And you post your story somewhere on social media and it doesn't get 1 million likes. So what? There will be one person, 2 person, 5 people, 10 people, 20 people that get it, that like it, that resonate with it, that know it. There will definitely be out of that group someone that it helps. So please, please, please share your stories. There is someone out there that's in a position that you were once in. Be that starting a business, in a broken relationship, suffering from trauma, starting a career, moving to a new country, going to university, starting a pop career, coming face to face with a disease, recently received a diagnosis that they're neurodiverse, recently admitted to themselves about their sexuality, or someone that's coming face to face with grief right now. Just going off that list, it tells you straight away there's probably a lot of people that need to hear your story, right? Because you've negotiated some of those challenges. There's been some successes, been some failures, there's been some massive adjustments to your life, and a lot of lessons learned. And by sharing those lessons, you are able to process your journey. You're able to let off steam, let go of things maybe you don't want to carry anymore, and or also able to acknowledge how far you've come along your journey. It helps you to connect, build rapport, and help other people through their journey. And it makes everyone feel heard and seen and connected. It makes the world a better place because you realize you're not alone. And how could we be alone on this great big rock? Wowzers. So with that in mind, it's time to share this week's Espresso Shot of Confidence. And with it, I share a quote from Demi Lovato. I like this quote. And it goes like this: So share your story with someone. You never know how one sentence of your life story could inspire someone to rewrite their own. I don't think there's anything else to add there, right? So with that in mind, it's time to ride off into the sunset of today. I invite you to share your stories. I invite you to reach out to people. I invite you to share your knowledge, your experience, your compassion, your empathy, you with the world. And I also invite you to subscribe wherever you're listening or watching this to get notifications of further episodes whenever they drop. And as always, don't forget to be awesome.